Thank you for joining us today for our presentation on agreements and mediation. We look forward to giving you a lot of information that may be something that you can take advantage of. Here's the OCSS mission statement. OCSS puts children first by helping both parents provide for the economic and social well-being, health, and stability of their children. And we do that first by locating the parents, if need be, then establishing parentage, which we used to call paternity, but now families are formed in so many different ways. Parentage is a more all-inclusive term. Then we establish a child support order, which is done in family court through the efforts of someone called the support magistrate. We then enforce those orders, and we do our best to assist parents with debt management. And I see that through the chat that a number of people are expressing issues that have to do with collecting child support or having a hard time paying the amount of child support. We're going to address some of those topics today, but we also have other programs in this series that will devote more time to those topics. We know full well that child support is complicated, that raising a child under any circumstances is a challenge and it's expensive. And we also know that the child support system, as we practice it here in New York City or anywhere else in the country, is not perfect. But we are here to try to work with you to make the program work for you. Let's go to the next slide. A few quick definitions for those of you who said you had zero knowledge of the process. The CP is the custodial parent. That's the parent with whom the child spends the majority of the time, and the one who receives child support payments most of the time from the NCP or the non-custodial parent. And I saw a comment go by that the child's now living with me. So it's quite possible as a child grows up that the custodial parent could become the non-custodial parent, and the non-custodial parent could become the custodial parent if the child moves households and spends a majority of time with the individual that used to be the NCP. Current support is the amount that an NCP is required to pay on a regular basis pursuant to the child support order. It could be, to use Fran's example, $100 a month. Maybe that might be $50 payable every 2 weeks. That depends on the terms that are set forth in the child support order. Arrears is unpaid child support debt. That can be a problem for many non-custodial parents. And we know it's not just a problem for the non-custodial parent, but unpaid debt makes life hard on the custodial parent as well, and on the children. So we have strategies to try to reduce debt, and that's the subject of another presentation that we'll be making later in the summer. DSS is the Department of Social Services. That's the parent of HRA and OCSS, the parent agency. And sometimes when the child on a case or children on a case are receiving benefits, then the NCP's payment goes to DSS rather than the custodial parent. And if we have time at the end of the session, maybe we can talk about that in a little more detail. Also, cash assistance benefits, that can be either cash assistance, or if the child is receiving SNAP or Medicaid, those are instances where payments may go to the DSS rather than the custodial parent. I'm seeing a lot of questions about where can I go to get help. We will answer that in great detail. You can now reach out to us by email. You can set up a phone appointment. We'll go over all of that a little later in the presentation. And as I said, everybody will be getting a copy of that presentation. Next slide. Okay. When you become a client of child support, it's a long-term relationship. If, for example, a child support case is started when the child is 2, and in New York State, the age of emancipation is 21, that means we're likely to have a 19-year relationship with both the CP and the NCP. The life cycle begins when someone opens a case. We then establish parentage. Parentage must be established before a child support order can be issued, before the case can go to family court. Then the order is established by family court, and then we go about collecting and distributing the child support mandated by the order. And we go through, as necessary, steps to enforce or modify the order. And this is important because the two places where you see the arrows, the green arrow in the middle, the orange arrow on the right, these are the topics that we're going to be talking about today. An alternate path to establish an order and ways to modify an order as necessary during the long period of time that someone is involved with the child support system. Child support is intended to be right-sized. If you got a child support order of $200 a month when you were working at a given job X, and then you had your hours cut, or during the pandemic, you lost your job, you should get that order modified downward. Child support is intended to address who the non-custodial parent is at any given time. And we know that over a period of 19 years, things are going to change. You may be making more money, you may be making less money, you may get injured and have to go on disability, which means your order should be modified downward. So we're going to focus in today on a new way to establish orders and another route to modify orders. Let's go to the next slide. So one thing I want to stress right up front is child support is federally mandated. It's required of all 50 states, Native American territories. It's state supervised, and we answer to New York State, but child support is locally administered. And the reason I want to take a minute to point out that it's federally mandated, state supervised, and locally administered is because the programs we're going to discuss today only apply to New York State cases, that New York City cases. That is to say, cases that are enforced by family court in one of New York City's 5 boroughs. I saw some stuff go by in the chat where a case may be out of state. These programs do not apply in those instances, but stick around. We're going to try to answer your questions, and we will stay and answer questions today as long as is required, because I know we've got a lot of people in attendance, and I'm sure there are a lot of questions. Next slide. Okay, first thing we're going to talk about are initial agreements. Next slide. It used to be there was only one way to establish or modify an order, and that was go to court, go directly to court. As I said earlier, in the case of child support, that's family court, and specifically it's family court. It's the support magistrate portion of family court, which does not have anything to do with custody or other questions. It strictly deals with child support. And that required filing a petition, getting a hearing date, going to court. Maybe people show up without all the necessary documentation, so the case gets adjourned. You have to go back to family court again. And if you've ever been to family court, as I have, you know that it's crowded, it's noisy, things happen very quickly. The cases go past very quickly. And I see a lot of people in family court who are at the end of their hearing are like, I don't understand what happened. So the traditional court process can be difficult. That's part of the reason we invented the agreement process, which really came about during the pandemic when the courts were closed for a while. So now, both to establish an order and to modify an order, there's the opportunity to have those agreements facilitated by OCSS, which, as you'll see as we go along, has some real benefits to the process. Next slide. Okay, so to establish an order with an agreement, this is an alternative to the traditional approach that simplifies the process and gives both parents a voice in it. It's voluntary, you don't have to do it, but it will lead to the same financial outcome. That is to say, whether you work with us to create an agreement or go to court, the same Child Support Standards Act laws, that is a New York state law, will be applied. So it's not that you're going to get a different obligation amount of what needs to be paid every month, but by doing it in the with us through customer service, you can meet virtually or in person. If it's a bad relationship between the CP and the NCP, we can deal with each party separately. Plus, OCSS staff can do this with you over the phone or in a virtual setting, or you can come into the office. There'll be more opportunity to ask questions and get answers. And ultimately, you do have to go to court at the end, so the support magistrate can ask you, do you understand this agreement? Did you enter into it voluntarily? But the benefit of going to family court, knowing what the outcome's going to be, rather than going to family court having no idea what's going on, makes it a much more comfortable process. Plus, in all likelihood, you can do it in one trip because all the paperwork's been assembled, all the numbers have been crunched. So it hopefully in family court will be one and done rather than multiple trips. As we said earlier, if an agreement can't be reached, you can always still go to court. You haven't waived your right for that. So let's look real quickly, next slide, at the process. The parents and customer service fill out an agreement, and this can take a while. It might mean a few visits or a few phone calls, and then the agreement gets worked out. It's reviewed at no cost to you by attorneys that work for HRA, and then the agreement is sent to court. A hearing is scheduled. The NCP still gets served a summons, and then the parents go to family court to finalize the agreement, and the support magistrate then issues a child support order based on consent. Okay, now this is how we have the agreement process for initial court orders for child support. We also have a mechanism for modifying those orders, and my colleague Eileen Culhane is going to tell you about that.
Thanks, Chuck. Let's go to the next slide. So while the courts were closed, we worked hard to offer an alternative way for parents to modify an existing support order virtually. So it offers CPs and NCPs the opportunity to work with an OCSS customer service representative to discuss and come to an agreement on changing an existing child support order using the standard child support guidelines and calculations. So the benefits, as Chuck has mentioned, it shortens the time in court. You have an order that's aligned with the NCP's income. There's plenty of opportunities to ask questions because it is a more supportive process, and there can be an open discussion between parents. It decreases those default orders, and those are orders that happen by default if an NCP sometimes doesn't show up in court because now everybody's involved in the process. Izzy, let's go to the next slide.
Modifying an order, as with the agreements, allows the parents to discuss and come together to see about modifying the order. It's prepared with the parents and OCSS staff. It can be initiated over the phone. It's faster than petitioning the court. It gives both parents a voice, and usually only one short court appearance. Modifying an order through stipulation. And stipulation is just a fancy word for an agreement. Next slide. So either party can file a petition with the court to modify an order upward or downward when circumstances change. And that could include a new job or a raise, job loss or decreased income, incarceration, sudden disability, a change in custody, or a 15% change in income, or 3 years since the last modification. Now, part of the reason is that we think that an agreement, whether it's modifying an order or initiating an order, is preferable to going to court, is because the formal court process leads to uncertainties. You don't know what's going to happen. And going to court, as I said earlier, is difficult because it's a crowded place. As with every other government facility, you got to go through security. There's a lot going on. So staying out of court and working with us through customer service makes a lot more sense. Next slide. So as we noted earlier, and I just want to repeat this so it's clear for everybody, the parents or OCSS fill out an agreement. Now, let me make one thing clear. If the child's receiving benefits, then the non-custodial parent can seek a modification and work just with us, because the money is being paid to DSS rather than to the custodial parent at that time. Once the agreement is worked out, it's sent to court and a hearing scheduled. Parents go to family court, usually for just one hearing, and then an initial child support order or a modified child support order is issued. Next slide. Okay, so one more time, the benefits of agreements: shortens the time in court, usually only one short court appearance. If it's virtual, you don't even have to spend money to take a subway ride. The order should be aligned with the NCP's income as it currently exists. Working with us gives you the opportunity to ask questions. Next slide. It's a more supportive process because our customer service staff have more time and can spend more time with you than the support magistrate can. Hopefully, it will lead to an open discussion between the parents, and it will decrease default orders. A default order is when the NCP doesn't show up in court, in which case the support magistrate usually sets a high obligation amount, in part to encourage the NCP to get into court to demonstrate their actual circumstances. So we are in a better position to right-size the order to fit the circumstances of the non-custodial parent. Next slide. So here's an example of agreements and debt reduction in action. We had a parent who owed over $10,000 to DSS and had a $600 per month child support obligation. The NCP had been incarcerated, had now been released, and came to us, and applying MOTS and debt reduction, the child support amount was reduced from $600 a month to $100 a month, and $10,000 in child support debt that was owed to DSS was forgiven. So this can be very effective. Next slide. Okay, so as I promised you, here's how to get started. And you can do it as simply as just sending an email. And again, we'll be sending you a copy of this presentation. I know this is a messed up email address, dcse.cseweb@dfa.state.ny.us. That's a lot of email. But and you're going to get a link that you can click on in the presentation, so you don't even have to type all this. Put in the subject line agreement. If you just need help, you could use the same address and just send in the subject line, I need to set up an appointment. And now, instead of being forced to visit the customer service walk-in center at 151 West Broadway in Lower Manhattan on the 4th floor, you can arrange to have an appointment either by telephone or by a virtual connection, so that you can ask your question and hopefully get a satisfactory answer without having to take the time out of your day. Because I know, coming from the farther parts of Queens or the Bronx, it's a long ride to 151 West Broadway. Again, prior to the pandemic, you had to come to us. Now, we've worked out methods where we can work with you virtually, over the phone, or in some other method, so that we can take care of what your needs are. Okay, now the second part of this presentation is about mediation, and I'm going to turn the presentation, because by now you've definitely heard enough of my voice, over to my colleague, Robert Peart.
Okay, thank you, Chuck, and good morning, everybody. So now we're going to talk about something very different that brings NCPs and CPs together, and that is mediation, which is very important and a little less structured than the MOTS agreements. Mediation is offered to parents to negotiate conflicts while having a child support case. And the mediation can discuss how to deal with past due child support payments that are owed to the custodial parent. So what does mediation do? Well, it's a way for you and your child's other parent to find a positive way forward. Mediation provides confidential, fair, and free or low-cost help. Mediation programs across New York City will work with you and your child's other parent to find a positive way forward in conversations that can often be hard to have. The mediators who provide this service are trained to listen, to be fair, to keep the conversation safe and productive. And they can also discuss other aspects of raising the child or children. So it's a very important service that goes beyond just the monetary issues of child support. Next slide, Izzy. Okay, mediators, so regarding the mediation discussion, mediators can help parents come to agreements about such issues as past due child support payments, regular payments, and future child support payments, as well as issues regarding custody, or visitation, or child rearing. Parents can also communicate about other types of conflicts as well. For example, perhaps the NCP tends to call the CP in the evening, but the CP would prefer that they communicate by email, right? And things like that can, can engender, conflict and tension, right? Debt reduction is a key concern for us at OCSS, and we know that unpaid child support debt creates stress not only for that non-custodial parent who owes the money, but also the custodial parent and the children who depend on these payments. So we have an entire Training Institute presentation on debt reduction. Okay, so this slide here describes the mediation process in a nutshell, right? At the initial meeting, right? Parents meet with a trained and neutral mediator. And what the mediator does is lead a conversation about the parent's needs, and incorporating those needs, right? We're able to come to a realistic agreement, right? Addressing the needs of both parents. And ultimately, and this is important, right? Mediation doesn't tell you what to do. It facilitates, it guides a conversation. So parents make the final decisions, and the mediator helps. Next slide is it. Okay, so how do we get started? Well, it's a matter of taking control of the process. You and the other parent control the mediation process, right? Because you decide whether you want to participate, and you decide whether or not you want to accept the final agreement. And in terms of getting information about it, you can email that email address that we saw earlier, dcse.cseweb@dfa.state.ny.us, and be sure to include mediation, the word mediation, in the subject line. Next slide, please. Okay. There is a new mobile app which simplifies child support, and it's called the Access HRA Child Support mobile app. And the app can streamline a number of processes. It can streamline applying for child support, right? Submitting forms for enforcement challenges, as well as other affidavits. Also, the app enables you to make an online credit card payment without a fee, or retaining the payment information, right? Very important in our in these modern issues of cybersecurity and privacy. And also, you can use the Access HRA app to apply for the MOTS program. And the app is available in a variety of languages. And you can download it using the QR code on the screen that you see. Okay, next slide. All right. OCSS can help in a number of ways through customer service. OCSS customer services can help you with general questions about the child support program, and specific questions about your child support case. Can help you with applying for child support and understanding payments and obligations. Right, details about modifying an order or changing an address. Also, enforcement measures, the how, why, and when of enforcement measures, as well as how to obtain relief from an administrative enforcement action. Also, customer service can help you with debt reduction and employment programs. And this is very important. Remember, we're the Office of Child Support Services, and it doesn't help anyone if the NCP is unable to pay the child support obligations. So debt reduction and employment programs exist, and there are several of them. Also, information about the various office locations and also how to acknowledge parentage, and much more. Next slide. Okay. Okay, are listed here are a number of important child support resources. We see the website for New York City's Office of Child Support Services, as well as the State Office of Child Support. Also videos. OCSS provides a number of videos on YouTube, and also you'll get information about how to request a phone appointment with OCSS. All right. Also, OCSS provides a number of informational resources, again, about managing your child support debt. Also, handbooks made specifically to inform and aid NCPs and to specifically inform and aid CPs. And again, you can contact us, OCSS Customer Services, at the email listed there, dcse.cseweb@dfa.state.ny.us, or you can call the New York State Child Support Helpline. Okay. And also, if you're interested or need to enroll, you can do so today through the New York City Child Support Access HRA mobile app, or using the website, nyc.gov/child support mobile. Okay, next slide. Okay, Family Legal Care offers free legal information and advice on New York child support regarding family law and family court procedure. In New York State, many families are navigating that family court process without a lawyer, and Family Legal Care can help, right? The helpline gives family law information by phone, live chat, and email. Legal consultations provide an attorney via video chat or phone for family law help, and tech hubs provide computers and internet. And for appointments, you can call 646-496-0046. So yes, you have access to legal resources to help you navigate the child support process in your case.
I hope you found this presentation helpful. We appreciate your spending some time with us on a rainy Tuesday morning.